I have always wanted to be a little bit more than just an athlete. I might not be Kelsey the netballer anymore, and that's okay.
I love that so much.
I mean, it's not every day that someone comes in, addresses the team and says, we're not having a netball team anymore. But this is just not something that I ever thought that I would have to handle.
Yeah.
My philosophy has just been like, what's going to make me happy?
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. You go, you're awesome, you know? Like, and I was like, I wish it was that easy.
No. When you think it's all dead and gone and all hope is lost, the coolest things often come from those moments. Like my biggest thing out of this would be just never let anyone put you in a box, because I don't even know what box I fit in. So how can I let other people put me in one?
Hello, this is Under the Surface, Pumped by Reebok with your host, Anneli Maley. I'm here with special guest Kelsey Browne at Hoop City in Carrum Downs. Shout out to Hoop City. What an awesome, awesome place this is. We've just been walking around the courts. We've seen the gym. Cool facility. But let's get to the guest. Kelsey Browne, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm maybe going to call her KB, Kels, throughout the episode, so you know who I'm talking to. It's just the one person here. It's just us. We're just hanging out. What have you been up to so far this morning? Are you an early riser, coffee drinker?
Yes, I am an early riser. I stayed in the city last night. I got up and I had a coffee, and then I did make the trek down here, which I loved. It was beautiful, but it's pouring rain today.
Oh my God.
So the traffic was bad.
Yeah, so I have just relocated to Perth and it's 36 degrees today. So when I woke up this morning and I put on a hoodie and trackies and 2 pairs of socks and I walked outside and I was like, ooh, Melbourne is Melbourning.
Yeah, it is Melbourning today, which is weird because we had like a heat wave about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But typical Melbourne.
You know, I mean, not to talk about the weather, but it was funny because all over my TikTok, everyone was freaking out about the heat. They were like, it's going to be the hottest summer ever. And they're like, obviously, again, Melbourning 2 weeks later, it's like freezing again. And we're like, oh.
Yeah, no. You just can't like speak about Melbourne weather too much.
No, it's kind of sad. I was thinking, I was actually, my brother's here shooting around on the courts, and I was thinking about like how like the different a vibe is when you wake up in the morning. Like I've been waking up in the morning, going for a swim, getting a coffee, hanging out with my dog on the beach, and then going to practice. And I woke up this morning and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, no, I know we're probably going to touch on like mental health, but I genuinely am affected by the weather.
Yeah,
like,
seasonal depression is a thing.
It is.
Like literally. Anyway, I digress. Talk to me about like you as a human. If I ask what your day-to-day life is like at the moment, like who is KB in the everyday at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a change. I guess I'm sort of going through a bit of a I don't know, different like lifestyle at the moment. Netball's sort of not happening at the moment. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's just getting up. I'm still studying, so I'm studying psych.
Nice.
And I do, when I say that, everyone's like, oh, you know, how long do you have to go? I was like, well, I've been there for a really long time. I have a little while to go. I do like one subject a trimester, but I do like studying. Mm-hmm. And then I work sort of 1 or 2 days a week at a medical practice, doing like running like a netball program down there in Geelong. And then, you know, on the weekends, I'm sort of doing some sideline commentary for NBL. I'm doing some stuff with sports bets. So my weeks are like strange, but I do think I'm the kind of person that needs, you know, fingers in pies to stay stimulated. And like I just like doing new things and putting my hand to stuff like that. And I feel like this period of time has given me I don't know, a bit of a moment to think about, you know, where I want to go and what I want to do, and probably revisit some hobbies that I've enjoyed.
Yeah. Okay. I really want to bookmark that because I want to touch on that in a little bit. But I guess for the people that don't know you, if you could give us a blurb of like not just your current, but your past, you know, couple years as a super, super successful netball player. And this won't be about our sport for the most part, but to set our listeners up for who you are, if you could give me a blurb about like who you are in the sporting world, I guess.
For sure. I obviously play netball and had been with Collingwood for the last 5 years, I think it was. And prior to that, I grew up playing basketball and netball and sort of got to 16, 17 and didn't grow. And I think my parents were sort of like, maybe netball's the way to go because your coaches keep telling you not to drive.
Yeah. You are too small to be in the queue.
I was really good for a 3, but anything else not great at. Yeah. And so my netball career sort of started like through the pathways. And then I got my first break. A really interesting story actually is my sister was 4 years older than me and playing for the Melbourne Vixens. I was a training partner at the time and she went over to Perth, was playing a game, round 5, did her knee. And I was sitting at home sort of thinking like, because what happens is training partners like go into the team once, someone gets injured. Yeah. And I was sitting there like bawling my eyes out because my sister's like World Cup dreams have disappeared. And but also thinking like, wait, hang on, is this like my opportunity? Yeah. Is this like my chance? So it was a really strange moment. So my debut game actually came at the hands of my sister doing her ACL.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was wild. For the family that week was wild.
Because it's a lot of like up and down. Like, did you find it hard in that moment to be like super, super happy about it? Or were you like, wow, this is amazing, and then you had the guilt surrounding it? Or
I'm lucky that she's incredible. And like I said, her World Cup 4 months later, was out of the question now. And she probably more so out of anyone in the family. We were all devastated about it because, your family rides the highs and lows of your sport. And I hadn't really started yet, so I was still really inspired and looking up to her and just wanting to be who she was. And so I think I was more shattered than her about the knee. And she came home and she was like, right, this is what we're doing. She sat down with me. She like wrote plays on like a notepad and she was like, when this happens, this is what you're going to do. And if you get the opportunity. And so I was really lucky that she was amazing, but it was a weird period of time. But I still think it's like such an interesting story to think that my debut game came at essentially the hands of my sister. So that's how it started.
Wow.
And then I sort of came in as a injury replacement player for her. And then after that, I was a fully signed player, went to Sunshine Coast Lightning. I played 5 quarters at Vixens. Like I'd got no court time, which is fine. Like that's sort of what happens when you're starting out. And I got an opportunity to go to the Sunshine Coast Lightning. So I moved to Queensland for a little bit, played in 2 premierships up there, and then decided to come home to Melbourne, where I played at Collingwood Magpies. And I guess like my resume when people say it is I've played, I think it's 106 National League games, which is...
That's a lot.
I'm very proud of that because I guess making it to like there's 14 games in a season plus finals. So you've had to be around for a little bit of time to play 100 games. I've won a couple of premierships and I won a silver medal at a World Cup, which is hard to talk about because Australia in netball, if you don't win a gold, it's a bit disappointing. So I'm really proud of the silver medal that we won at a World Cup.
I think that you should be. Yeah. I think any sort of medal at any sort of World Cup is a massive, massive achievement. But I understand like the pressures around especially netball in Australia and the cultural significance of like what netball is in our society. So I get it.
Yeah, it's winning.
Yeah.
And so, I've represented my country, which is something I'm really proud of. And I feel like I've sort of, if I could put my career in a box, it's something I'm incredibly proud of.
Yeah. So I think that was a great intro to who you are as a sports person. Now that we understand, or people have a little bit more of an understanding about, what you've done, that's not really who you are. So what I'd like to do is ask you a little bit about like who you were as like a kid, I guess. So how would your sister, how would your parents, how would they describe young Kels?
I think they would say that my mum always says, we had Madison, who's my older sister, and we were like, oh, yep, she's great. And she crosses the T's and dots the I's. And then we had you and we were like, what went wrong? So I think they would explain me as quite like I was a very vibrant, bubbly, had a lot of like character and personality as a child. I loved performing. So like music's a big part of our life. My parents play in a band. And so all of that just I think amalgamated into like this personality that was like bigger than anything else. And I feel like I've had to sort of temper that as I've grown up. And I feel like in my family, my sister was quite happy for me to take the limelight. Like I was the center of the attention, and she was quite happy to just roll around in the background. But yeah, so that's how they would probably describe me. And then I don't know. I feel like I was a good kid, and I was good at school, and but definitely a perfectionist, and definitely remnants of early sort of overachieving. You know, I really wanted to be good at everything. I was a perfectionist as a kid, so I feel like that's also been something that's been hard to break out of as an adult.
Oh my God, yeah, 100% agree with that. I probably was a bit the same as like I was a very like flamboyant, loud kid, but had to be good at everything all the time. Now, I remember personally there was a time when all of that kind of came to a head for me, and I started questioning, who was I? Who am I? What does this all mean? Like, I know that you've experienced, like I've, you know, read, I've listened. I know that you've experienced a little bit of that stuff. So for you, like, do you remember the time in your life as like maybe a teenager or preteen, whatever, when you got to a point where you were, you know, the loudest in the room and fun and all this, but that started to change?
Yeah, I can remember coming home from school one day and just saying to mum, like, this is too hard, it's too much. And that was pretty much the start of about 3 or 4 months of like a really challenging period of time. And the hardest thing for me was that I was still doing well at everything. Like I was still an A+ student. I was like a school sports captain. Like I would, you know, my sport was going really well. I had a great group of friends. I was going out every weekend. I still had a social life. You know, I was winning school premier. Like I was still doing everything. But I feel like, you know, and only my parents can speak to this, but every single day I would come home from school and I would be in tears from like 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 p.m. doing homework, but like crying. And I just didn't really understand what was going on. And I just feel like it kind of got to a point of like exhaustion and trying too hard to maintain this standard that I'd set for myself. And no one was setting it for me.
Just you,
it was
right?
Just me.
Yeah.
It was purely just like, if I drop from this, if I'm not the best at everything, and I'm still like this now. You know, I'm there's going to be issues, or I'm going to feel a certain way. I'm way better at handling it now. Like it's nowhere near any part of my worth. Like if I fail at something, almost enjoy failing now.
Because it's like test you, I guess.
And it makes me figure out who, you know, how I'm going to respond in situations. If everything's going well, you're not often faced with, you know, your character and your resilience and how you're going to come out of that. But I had a really tough period of time from about 16 to 20.
So I was going to ask, I was like, when did that period of time start? 16 is so hard. Like I was about 16 when I started going through that stuff as well. Like, did your parents know what resources to kind of channel you towards, or were they like, I remember my dad being like, okay, well, how do we help? Where do we take you? Who do we have you talk to? Like, did your parents know how to deal with that stuff at the time, or?
No, I think back then there was also a lot of stigma around it. So and like I love my parents, but our way of dealing with it was like, okay, we don't talk about it. We're quiet about it. They took me to a heap of different psychs. I was on, you know, trialing different medication, XYZ. Remember going to the doctor and they were like, oh, maybe it's just your hormones, and like they put me on the pill at 16 and I was like not sexually active.
So like
it was wild. Like if I think about the whole thing, it was no one knew what to do. So I do look back on that now and go, wow, I think we've come so far, and there's so many resources now, and I think a lot of parents out there would be able to point their kids in the right direction and be able to talk to a lot more people. But you know, that's a really long time ago, and that wasn't as accessible as it is now.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'd like to sidebar for a second. So
we got deep there.
I'd like to I want to build off that. So I'd like to sidebar, because I remember one of my first appointments after I'd seen a psych, they sent me to a doctor, and I was about 16, and literally one of their first suggestions was like, oh, could be your hormones, go on the pill.
Yeah, what the hell? What?
And I was like, I don't really know. And I'm sitting there with my parents like, nah, like, what do you mean?
And they asked the question. I was like, no.
But like, and then off that, they then rattle all these, like a list of like 8 different antidepressants that you can try, all these different medications. And my parents, they didn't know anything about these medications. Like they just didn't know, and that's not their fault. They just had no education about it. And then, so you're sitting there as like a young athlete that is used to overachieving in everything, not just in your social life and your personal life, your academics, your everything. And you're getting told a list of medications that you could take to make yourself feel normal. And that feeling is like so completely terrifying. And I think the thing that a lot of people don't realize is with medications, especially for like depression, anxiety, all this stuff,
they numb you out.
They completely numb you out.
Yeah.
Completely. And there's a list of side effects that just goes on. And if it works, great. But if it doesn't, the side effects are awful. And sometimes you get worse from taking these other medications. What was your experience going through the journey of figuring out what worked? Or did you get lucky and find one that worked straight away?
No, well, it was that paradox of like, I like my personality, and I'm often told that my personality is vibrant and amazing, and people loved me for, like that side of me. But then also I wasn't normal at a certain, like it's so hard to explain, but that paradox of being like celebrated, but also making that be a thing that I need to change with chemicals was so interesting. And at 16, you hardly know you're still trying to figure out, okay, what do I stand for? What are my morals? What are my values in life? Like, where am I, and you're not supposed to know that at 16.
No.
I often say to people, like when people say 18's adult, I'm like, no.
I'm 25. I don't feel like an adult, just putting it out there. Like
I'm 31, and I reckon about 4 years ago, I was like, all right,
here we go. Adulting.
Doing it.
Yeah.
And still like learning. But yeah, at 16, I guess to go through that, and it really numbed me out, and I wasn't on it for long, and I kept I was quite rebellious with what I wanted to take and what I didn't. And I think it was because it made me feel so different from who I was, but I also really enjoyed who I was. I just needed to bring the bottom end up a little bit. Like I really wanted to keep the Energizer Bunny
like
version of myself.
Yes.
Yeah. But I wanted to bring the bottom up. It was difficult to find something that worked.
Yeah.
And I think what worked for me the most was talking. To people. And I'm not on medication now. I haven't been on medication for a really long time because I do think it alters me almost too much, but I will talk to someone every single week.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. I think that it's something that I was trying to explain to someone actually just the other week. I was having the conversation about like, I'm on a medication now that really works for me.
It's great.
But when I was, 16, the first thing I took was sertraline, and you're not sad, but you're not happy either.
No, you're just kind of flatline, like going through life. Like.
You just kind of exist. And it's a super weird feeling. You're like, and like something traumatic would happen, and it's like I couldn't cry about it because I was like, okay, right, this is happening. But like, and then I like remember some of my peers at the time were like, why are you not more affected by this? I'm like, I am, but I don't feel much. Like there's
also,
not.
Like I think changes your relationship with your sport too.
100%.
I was like, I love winning.
Yeah.
Like, winning's very important. To me.
Yeah.
And like it's not everything, but at all. But I do enjoy the feeling. That's why I like sport, and I like working with the competitive. And I love working with my teammates and achieving a goal. And so winning is like exciting, and that period of time I didn't enjoy winning. I didn't hate losing. I didn't enjoy winning. I just was sort of like, I'm playing sport.
You're floating.
Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you talk to anyone who's involved in sport, part of it, like you lose your purpose when it's not you're working towards things with other people. And that might not be like winning a championship. That might be
something
like
completely different.
No, that might be like creating lifelong friendships, or like working towards something like there is that real connection that comes when you're in a space with other people.
Yeah.
And it really changed my relationship with sport and my ability to figure out my purpose within that.
When you kind of, at what point did you start to kind of figure out, so yeah, you need to talk to people, but like you've had a long career. How did you start to manage your outside life with your performance? And like, I know it's interesting because a lot of people see people performing and doing super well and achieving all these things and think, yeah, they got it together. They must go home and look at themselves in the mirror and think, you go, you're awesome, you know? Like, and I was like, I wish it was that easy. Like, so what did that look like for you while you were performing, while you're achieving all these things? What was your brain doing in those situations, for lack of a better term? But
I feel like I compartmentalize my career into maybe two parts, which is like the early days when I think everyone can relate to this. You're really trying to assert yourself in your sport and you're quite selfish and you'll do anything to get there and you'll train through injuries and you'll lie about how you're feeling and you'll just do anything. It's this early stage where you're really trying to prove yourself, and I feel like every day you wake up and you're like, how can I show everyone that I'm amazing? And then the second part of my career is like not having to prove a single thing to anyone and doing it for the generation of next players and doing it for my teammates and doing it because my parents absolutely love sitting in the crowd and watching me perform. And so the second part of my career was not for me at all. And so I like to put it into those two parts because I think that's I think everyone who's had a long career or even a career will understand that when you first come into it, it's all about just proving yourself. So I do think in the early stages of my career, the performance side and talking to the psych was a lot around, you know, how can I get out of a rut when I'm on court? Like what used to happen to me is I would make a mistake and I would go quiet for like 5 minutes and I wouldn't be able to get myself out of it. So a lot of the early parts of my career, I didn't even address how I was feeling around myself and my identity because I was so focused on my performance. And then as I started to move through that, I started to realize like, hang on, if you're walking into a game and you don't feel like your self-worth is high or you don't feel confident or you haven't addressed things outside of your life, you're going to be walking on court not able to express yourself how you want to. So that's probably how I worked through it was performance side, but also this holistic approach that if I'm feeling happy as a person, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be able to express myself and feel confident in a different way. So it was performance. And then, I found that I had to make sure that my self was fine before I went in. So selfishly, I really need to ask this question because I feel like I'm at this interesting roadblock at the moment because I can so heavily relate to the like proving yourself in the first part of your career. Like that is, I think, universal in most sports. Like I would think the like establishing yourself in the league, blah, blah, blah. It's very interesting because I haven't yet hit the point where I feel like I belong, which is actually a little bit wild when I think about it because like, you know, I won MVP of the league and I still don't feel like I'm good enough. I literally got goosebumps.
Like it's really quite interesting. Like I just came back from a preseason tournament and I love my team. They're beautiful humans. I'm in a really great environment. But someone asked me how I thought I was doing. And I was like, I just feel like I'm so bad. Like I feel like I'm letting people down and I don't know if I'm good enough to play in this league. And I was talking to someone who was in like their first year in the league and they were like, Anneli, what are you talking about? Like you played in the WNBA, you played for the Opals, you've won MVP. Like, what do you mean you don't feel good enough? And I was like, I don't know. And then like I was a bit dumbfounded and I didn't know how to answer that question. So instead I just like gave her a hug and I was like, love you. Like I didn't know how to do that. So I guess hearing that you did transition to that second half where you were able to like play not to prove yourself, How did that even start? Selfishly, I would like to know the answer to this question.
Well, I think that's also just know that you're very normal. Because I felt exactly the same. You know, I feel like I would have girls come into the team and they would be young players and you could feel them sort of being like, oh my gosh, I would love to be where you are. And me being like, oh no, don't be me.
Yeah.
Oh no, like other people are way better than I am.
Yeah.
And you just don't feel that. But in another way, that's almost what makes you probably so good is because you'll always be trying to find like, I feel like I'm not counseling. No, I'm just saying like, but I think that's what happens is, you know, there will always be things that I can learn. Like I've played for 9 years, 10 years, something like that. And still would like be the person with the notepad and like, okay, how can I learn and how can I be better? And I think the sooner I accepted the fact that I will probably never be so happy with how I've played or whatever, but also that's my strength is that I'll always be finding something else. So I think accepting for me that's my superpower is that I will never rest on what I did last week and I always know that I can be better. Yeah. And it's a hard situation, but I think you can harness that and be like, that is my strength. Because I don't think a lot of people have that. I think sometimes, and you see it all the time, you know, young players come into the league sometimes and they're like, right, I've made it. And I'm like, oh no, my mindset is like, no, now it starts.
Yeah, it starts
like you
now.
come in and it starts. It's not you get on a list and now you've made it. Yeah. It's like now the hard work starts and now like all of that kind of doesn't matter. Yeah. And same with anything outside of my life. Like I'm always just finding ways that I can improve. So I do think it has translated. But I would say like accepting that's a superpower.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I really like that.
That the way that you look at things and the want to always be better is like, that's great.
Because it's like, I mean, I've said this so many times on this podcast before. It's, you know, it's what makes us so good, but also can make us so miserable. So I guess it's counteracting the kind of what you said before, lifting the bottom up. Yeah. Lifting the bottom up. So like you can still achieve the highs, but the floor isn't quite as low.
No.
Like, I like that.
And that's the, like, I think that with performance too, or like games, I would say I didn't really like, when you get a little bit older, it's the margin for improvement or altering your game so much is much smaller than when you're starting out. Like you can improve so much. You can improve 110% when you're first coming into the league, but then after you've played for a little while, you've really created how you play.
Yeah.
And so my biggest thing over the last 3 or 4 years was bringing the consistency closer. So my good game was great, but my bad game was still good.
Yeah.
And not the inconsistency of like, okay, sometimes I'm terrible and sometimes I'm amazing. Yeah. But I do think accepting that that's a mindset that not a lot of people have.
Okay. I like that. That makes me feel better. Okay, so I want to ask about, and like we'll probably double back on a few of these things, but I guess you now, right? So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about your career. We will double back on some things, but where are you at now in terms of like, obviously Collingwood doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
So what I want to ask first about what that experience was like to you. Because, you know, you were planning on playing there for a while.
Yeah.
For any athlete that has had to go through a period of time where they don't have a contract or where they're not sure where they're playing or they don't know if they're going to continue doing anything, tell me about your experience handling all of that and what that was.
Yeah, it's so funny that you're like, Collingwood doesn't exist anymore. Like they've just won a premiership in the football, but I love that.
Yeah. No, they don't exist.
No, they don't.
They don't exist.
So it was a really strange period of time. And I feel like in 5 years' time, I'm going to look back and be like, whoa, that was not normal. Yeah. That doesn't normally happen. I mean, it's not every day that someone comes in, addresses the team and says, we're not having a netball team anymore. It's just not something that you prepare for. And I spoke to someone while it was all happening. I was like, you know, you prepare for form slumps and injuries and like other things that happen within sport, but this is just not something that I ever thought that I would have to handle.
Yeah.
And it was a really weird period of time because it yeah, I look back on it and I was like, that was the hardest week of my life.
Yeah.
So like an immediate family member got diagnosed with cancer that week. And then like within 2 days, I also got told that I essentially would be unemployed at the end of this season. And the club that I had given so much time and energy to for the past 5 years was no longer going to exist. And you would understand this, like when you live and breathe and eat and sleep a particular club and you just love them. Like I just adored Collingwood. I loved everything about what they were around. I felt like when you're in the inner sanctum of a huge club like that, you just feel like you have wings. Like it was an amazing feeling. So to then sort of have to be like, wow, I'm going to have to move on from this club. It was almost like a breakup. Yeah. So it was a really strange period of time. And I think the way I've sort of handled it, I think has been, I want to say I'm really proud that it has probably been 3 years or 4 years in the making of this second part of my career that has been like, okay, how do I build myself up outside of netball so that when something like that does happen, it's not my whole identity crashes down. And so that would be my advice for any players happening at the moment is that it can change at any time. It can be taken away from you. Injuries, anything, your club can fold. But it's how you've sort of set yourself up outside and the worth that you've given yourself outside of your sport, that it actually has been quite an easy transition. Like I look at it and I was like, if you had have said to me at the start of the year, this would be your year, I'd be like, and I will be crying into my pillow, not
every
handling
single night.
that. But I haven't at all. I think I've maybe shed about one tear and been like, all right, what's next? Like what other areas of my life can I look at and how can I start to flex different muscles of different skills that I've honoured over the last 3 years and how can I start to move forward in that? And so the transition has been relatively simple, but only because I put in that groundwork beforehand. And so I do, like I said, I do think that is such an important thing now that I've lived it. I will tell any young player, like, go and make sure that you're still flexing different muscles of hobbies and this and that and making sure that you're still upskilling yourself outside of your sport because it's so fickle, like your career. And I love sport and I love netball. And I always knew that I was going to stay involved in netball. I mean, in sport. But I do think, I really needed to make sure that I was fulfilling other areas of myself. And my worth wasn't wholly tied up as being a netballer.
Do you still feel like a level of expectation, maybe from yourself or maybe from family, people around you that are like, well, why don't you want to do it anymore? Why haven't you stopped? Like the inability to make a decision for your well-being and for the next chapter of your life without people being like, but why? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, I think other people become so much more attached to your career than you do. Like I said, I have always wanted to be a little bit more than just an athlete. Like I've always wanted to be, a good sister, a good friend, a good daughter, but also a musician, like be in the media space. I would want to be an astronaut if I wanted to. Like I just wanted to be a lot of other things other than an athlete. But it is really hard when everybody else just views you as Kelsey the netballer. And so you can have an opinion of where you want your life to go, but you've also got to remember that you've got fans and family members and who have rode every single up and down like a roller coaster for the last 10 years. And so I did have to be quite careful of, how that felt. And I had to sit down with my parents and sort of be like, this is a possibility. Like this is what's happening. And I don't know what's going to happen outside of Collingwood. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, but we need to start getting our heads around that I might not be Kelsey the netballer anymore. And that's okay. It was an interesting period, I guess, for my family who's had that sport in their life for so long. But also they, at the end of the day, just want me to be happy. And this has kind of been a moment in time where it's helped me explore other things. Because, when something happens and things don't maybe go your way, you're really forced into a position of, okay, what's next and how can I turn this around to be a positive thing for me? Because I think a lot of people would sit in this, oh, my club's just folded, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And not sort of make ways towards other directions. But I feel like I just went into this mode of like, all right, I don't really know what's happening, like, but this might be the coolest thing. Like, this might be great. This might be the catalyst to the next part of my 20 years of my life and my next career.
So you're excited?
I am, yeah. And I feel like you have to look at it like that. You can't look at it like, oh, this is shattering, because don't look at the past.
Yeah.
Like, just look forward. Just keep looking forward. And I've learnt so many things from my sporting career, but I also, you know, I still have so much more to learn and give in other areas.
Do you think that, like, operating at such a high level, and I don't mean that in a sporting kind of sense, I mean, like, being an athlete, you have to be on all the time. You're always thinking about these little things and blah, blah, your brain's always going. Do you think that's helped you transition into, you know, whatever this is for you next, because you're able to kind of like visualize things and motivate yourself and all those things? So like, it's kind of set you up in a good position? And then on that, do you feel like sometimes that can hurt you because you're sitting there trying to be the best you can at this next chapter and you're overthinking that at all? Like, talk to me about both sides of that, like being a motivated person, but also like, do you find that maybe that motivation is you need to change the way that it applies to this new part of your life, I guess?
Well, I think hands down, I'm grateful that I have been a professional athlete. It has taught me skills and values and ways to go about things that, you know, I think really translate into life, and like how to work in a team and how to be resilient and how to make deadlines and be committed to things. And so I am forever grateful for my professional career and for my coaches and my teammates for teaching me a lot of those skills.
Yeah.
But I do think it has been an interesting way that it's come out in the next phase of my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a normal transition. Like, usually when athletes, quote unquote, retire, it's a big deal. Like, people make a big deal of it. They have usually a last game at the club, and it's you didn't have that.
No,
you didn't do the traditional, quote unquote, like, you don't know if you're, like, do you know if you're retired? Are you going to say that you have?
No.
Or no?
Like, I'm not.
You just don't want to put a label on it.
I just don't want it to be a thing. Like, I just want to be, you know, we're in this really precarious position at the moment as netballers. There's no CBA deal on the table. It's quite an interesting period of time.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I could be sitting there like twiddling my thumbs being like, okay, what happens next to me as a netballer? Or I could just go and utilize the time to be like, okay, how can I make this a positive situation for me?
Yeah.
And so, no, I'm not retiring. I'm not doing anything. You're just
existing.
I'm just running towards what opportunities are opening up for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's all you can look at. And if that means that, you know, netball happens again, cool. If it doesn't, cool. I am just going towards things that are filling me up at the moment and making me feel happy and making me excited and are new ways to learn. And I've always been that kind of person that goes, okay, how can I add another string to my bow? What else can I do in this situation? So this whole period of time has just been it's been challenging.
Yeah.
Like, it's been really hard, but it's also been like, all right, if I just flip my outlook on it and go, great, like, let's move forward and let's look at different opportunities and where that might open up, maybe I get the decision back on my terms and sort of I can choose what I do.
Yeah.
And I have a lot more autonomy in my life around, you know, where I go with anything. So I just want to leave everything sort of open-ended.
I love that so much. Like, under the table, I'm like clicking my fingers, I'm like, slay. Like, that is because we feel so pressured to define our every movement. You don't have to define your every movement.
No.
If you want to keep going, you can. If you want to stop, you can. We can do that also throughout a season. If we want to stop in the middle, technically we could. But like, we have this pressure to like always define our next step. I'm just going to put it out there that you could possibly be paving the way for a new way to like actually define what you want to do in your life. Like, if someone decides to take a season off, They don't have to announce that they want to take a season off. They just could.
Yes.
If someone wants to like, oh, maybe try this, maybe try that, and everyone's like, oh, they're retiring. No, who cares? Like, you've now, the way that you're talking about this might even open up a whole new can of like opportunities for people to just kind of step outside of the traditional, pathway on how they're supposed to do things, because you don't have to declare that you're going to do something. I love that you're running into things, like leaning into the things that are exciting you and like literally jumping headfirst into all of your opportunities and not feeling like you have to define yourself based on these like strict kind of box-like of definitions. That's like...
Well, I think the whole time that you're an athlete, you're told where you need to be going and what you need to be doing and how you handle things. And for the first time in my career, I've sort of been like, well, I've been faced with something that's quite difficult. I don't know how to navigate it, but you know how I'm going to navigate it is I'm just going to leave everything open and I'm just going to go to, like, it's actually been so simple. My philosophy has just been like, what's going to make me happy?
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
And, who do I need to talk to? Like, what do I want to do? Okay, next week I want to sing a national anthem at a game.
Yeah.
Who do I need to talk to be able to do that? And like, what?
Yeah.
Why? Like, why? Because I feel like I really want to try and do this, or like I feel like if I can tap into that and have a go, then why not?
Yeah.
And I do feel, so many people have been like, what are you doing? And my answer to everyone is I'm not sure, but that's also okay. Like, I have no idea where I want to. I don't have a direction that I want to go in. There's obviously things that are like firing me up at the moment and lighting me up inside that I'm like, okay, like the commentary stuff at the moment is really fulfilling a part of me that I'm like, oh, I really love this.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know that if I didn't get the opportunity to go and do that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just finding at the moment, I don't want to say no to anything. I don't want to I don't want to diss any part of my life, or I don't want to neglect any part of my life. That's just over here, and I'm just going to leave it over here.
Yeah.
And if it stays open, it stays open. And if it closes, it closes.
Yeah. You know what I really like about this is it sounds like when you talk about your career, you're talking about your career as a human. You know what I mean? Like, when you talk about your career, you're not talking about like, oh, my netball career. You're talking about like your career. And I like that we're not defined by, what we produce, but our career is just who we are and what we do every day. And it doesn't actually have to be just one thing. It can be many things, and it doesn't have to fit into the standards of a regular job or a regular season or, a regular person's output, right? So it sounds like you're putting yourself into this area where your career is so broad and it just means it doesn't mean sport.
No. At the moment, the netball stuff, I have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to spend my energy worrying about that when I can just spend my energy on how can I add to Kelsey Browne as a person. You
know why you're not retiring? Because you can't retire from yourself. And you're just being you. You're just being you, and you're leaning into whatever's coming at you, and you can't retire from just existing. You can't retire from yourself. I'd like to branch off for a second into some topics surrounding like women in sport, and I guess like the things that we kind of deal with and are put up against. So I'll start with this. Like, as a netball player, as a female athlete, did you ever feel lesser than a male athlete, and why? And tell me about a story there. And if that hasn't happened to you, because I guess, like there is a men's netball league now. But like in terms of like being a female at the top of your game in a sport that's like, for the most part, only had a professional league for women, I would sit there, like from an outsider, I sit there and I'm like, that's it. That's what I would want. I would want people to look at my sport and be like, that is the best thing in the world, not compare me. Did you ever get compared to men? And answer that question however you will.
I feel like it is different when, with basketball, there's male and female. And so the comparison is quite easy in a way because you're both playing the same sport. Same with AFLW and AFL, NRLW. Like they all have a male counterpart. Netball, it was a sport for women, and it was an area where women could go and almost feel safe and not, where there's still women's sections of gyms. And it is quite, I think a lot of it has to do with how we feel body-wise and everything like that. I do think that is some part of it. Yeah. It's a place where women can go and be surrounded by other women, and it was a really like empowering a lot of women in a space, sort of like building each other up. So I feel like that was, but the men coming into netball now has given a whole nother element to it, and it is as exciting. And so I feel like I probably haven't had the severity that other sports have had of being compared to males, or not being respected for your sport.
That is something that I've always really, really respected about like netball, is that it is a place that you can go to witness some super powerful females excel in an area that like they're not compared to men.
No.
And that's honestly something I've never, ever experienced.
No.
Only have I ever seen that in netball. Yeah. Seriously.
And you stand alone in that, like, you are strong, powerful, fit, aggressive. It's like a place where you can show your aggression as a female, because I feel like so often, stereotypes are very much like, can you please be a wallflower and maybe just but you can go, like, netball to me is a really special place, I think, for men and women now, that you can really go and express yourself. And that was something that I think when I was going through my period of time from 16 to 20, when I was struggling with that, hands down what I would say to people is, like, my favorite time of the week is to go and play netball, because I'm not thinking, I'm outside of my head. I'm not thinking. It's a place where I can go and be creative. I can go and there is no right or wrong way to play. You're just going and doing what you want to do, and you're in your body and you're feeling that. And I feel like that has been sport for me. Anything that I've played, it's always been a way to express myself. So I think for women to be able to have a place where they can go and, like, you can go and be aggressive on a netball court, that's pretty cool. You're not often allowed that space in other areas.
No, seriously, because I think that, like, to be a confident, aggressive is the wrong term, because, like, our confidence can sometimes be taken as aggression.
But I don't think aggression needs to have, like, a negative connotation.
Right. Aggressive is a good thing.
Well, assertive maybe. You're right. I needed to say assertive.
maybe like, I mean, aggression on the court is a great thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, in life we'll call it assertiveness, but that can be taken as a negative thing when women show it all the time.
How many times have you been told in your life, like, You're just too much.
You're too much. Yeah. Literally the words at the same time.
Oh, sorry, I'm just having an opinion.
Yeah.
So I do feel like sport, I think, for females is a really important piece of the puzzle, because it gives you a space where you don't have to be apologetic for being driven or like hardwired or like focused towards something. And I feel like in other areas of our life, sometimes it can be questioned.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a very interesting question, and this might not apply to you. So have you ever been told by a teammate or someone within your space that you are too much? Like, or has that never come from the people within your space? Like, when I say within your space, I mean within your profession, because I've had people within my profession tell me, you're too much, you need to tone it down.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course you get that.
Yeah.
But I think that's when you have to have conviction in yourself and be like, well, this is how I want to go about it. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm not going to be everyone's favorite person. But what needs to feel good is how I'm presenting myself and how I'm showing up in the world. And that's important to me.
Yeah.
So I might be too much for someone, but also... Oh, well.
What's too much of a good thing?
I'm just also like, as long as I'm not, grinding people's gears or like making their day miserable, I feel like I have to show up authentically. And if I'm not doing that, then like I'm not going to be the best version. And I do think sometimes that comes from just wanting everyone to conform. But what I've learned about teams is you need different personalities. You need different types of people. You can't have, you can't have 10 vibrant, loud, flamboyant people. That doesn't work. You can't have 10 quiet people who don't want to contribute or like don't feel comfortable, or you need so many different varieties of people. Yeah, you do. And that's how the best teams that I've been involved in work. And sometimes in one team you'll play one role. Sometimes in another team you'll play a different role. And so I have been told that before, that you're too much and you're too this and you're too that. But I also feel like I just always came back to, I think my place in this team is important, whatever I bring. And I'm here for a reason. World. Yeah, I'm here for a reason. And I think, I can add what I add, and I'm never going to. I think also the other thing that you learn from that is not to be judgmental of other people. Yeah. Like just because I want to contribute in every single team meeting and I want to talk about this and this and this, just because somebody else doesn't want to do that doesn't mean that they're wrong. Yeah. So, I think sport has definitely taught me, how to be understanding of so many different personalities and how they work. And some of my best friends are the complete opposite to me. Yeah. 100%. The complete opposite. And I feel like that's because I'm like, I respect that so much. I want to add a little bit of you to me. Yeah. I've definitely been told that.
If there was a young girl or boy that said to you, hey, look, someone says to me like, oh, hey, can you relax? You're just being too much. What would you tell them to say?
I would probably, like if it was me, I would probably ask like, oh, sorry. I wouldn't say sorry. I would just say, look, I want to know what it is that you think is too much, or like what I would implore them to ask the question around like
what's too much,
like what is it to you, and in a really like non-inflammatory way. I just really want to understand it so I can figure out if that's something I can adjust, or if there's just something that like you and I maybe need to work through. And I would always just say, one, don't go away from like who you authentically are, but two, ask questions. Like I always want to understand, why someone maybe doesn't like me, or why someone, and doesn't mean I want to change it.
You just want to know.
I just want to sort of understand, oh, okay, like maybe for some people that's a little bit jarring. Like I didn't even view that as something that would be taken as too much, but it's just important for me to now understand that maybe that sometimes can be. Yeah. So for kids, I would just, I would have the conversation. Like I just think having conversations a lot of the time fixes a lot of problems. Yeah. Like the problems often fester when everyone's just talking around it, or, when your teammate's talking to another teammate about you being too much, instead of just saying to you, hey, like I don't really like when you do this, or this makes me feel a particular way when you do this. Like I feel like talking a lot of the time fixes a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I guess like as you're kind of, you've been in the eye of the media. So when I say you're moving into the media space, I mean like the commentary stuff, but also you've been in the eye of the media. How have you handled comparison? And like sometimes I see pictures of myself and see like videos of myself and I'm like, why did I make that face? Why did I do that? Oh, I look like this in this way. How have you handled that throughout your life? Because, you've always had media coverage in your sport, but also now you're on TV doing other things. How do you handle like the positive self-talk in that area, and does that affect you in any way?
I got given a piece of advice when I first came into a team, and it was just don't ride the highs or the lows too much. Like the best place to be is to sit in the middle, because and I sort of fleshed this out a little bit in my brain. I said to them, because someone will love me for how I tie my shoelaces and someone will hate me for the same way I tie my shoelaces. So you got to sort of sit in the middle. You can't buy into everyone being like, oh my gosh, I love Kelsey Browne, because for everyone who loves me, there's going to be a person that doesn't like how I go about things. But that's also not for me to manufacture or worry about or I guess get caught up in. So I guess the biggest thing for me, and I feel like I've taken that throughout my entire life, is to just sit a little bit in the middle and just to sit where it fits comfortably for you and not listen too much to the highs and lows. In the last 3 years of my career, this is going to sound really bad, but I muted every single netball thing. Yeah. Like I didn't go on X. I didn't go on Twitter. I saw nothing. I pretended like I was playing under 14 netball at a local park and that no one, had anything to say about my netball, and it changed my life.
I love that, and I feel like I'm leaning towards doing that myself this year.
And that's not like respecting what people have to say. And I know that people want to I know that there's a lot of times that people want to tell you how great you are. Yeah. But riding that wave was hard because the crash was so much bigger. So I just didn't want to hear any commentary around it. Yeah. I just wanted to, and it also made me come back to how do I feel about how I played? Yeah. Not I thought I had a really good game, but everyone on Twitter is saying I was terrible. Yep. That it's confusing. Yep. You get to come back to okay, how do I view that? What did I think? Maybe I didn't, I don't know, in basketball, maybe I didn't score 20 points. Maybe I had 2, but I did so many things off the ball that, and that was the impact that impacted the game. Or I was a great teammate on the bench. Yeah. People don't see that. People don't talk about that. No. So, I think removing myself from social media and the commentary around my sport changed my life. I, quickly will share this with you. I had an experience right as I moved to Perth. I was so incredibly excited for this new chapter. And I am a chronic read everything that anyone ever writes about me. Dull. It's not great. It's not great. And I will go through times where I'm like, no, I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to read it. It's funny. I never usually read it when I play well in my terms. Yeah, right. In my head, I'm like, I played well, blah, blah. But I think that I was seeking in the 1 in every 100 hate comments for someone to be like, oh, you were great. And I was like, oh, great. The validation. Yeah. And I realized that I was doing that because, I moved to Perth. I'd been there for 2 days, and there was a media outlet that wrote a preview of this WNBL season. And they did one player from each team, and the major point of the piece about me was good stats, bad team player, one hit wonder, and pretty much said that my last year in the league was really bad. And I was I didn't think I was bad. I just obviously wasn't as great as I was the year before, but I was I didn't actually think I was that bad. And I read that article, and I was sitting on the couch in the Airbnb that I was in Perth at the time, and it just crushed you.
So destroying. I was oh my God, this Perth isn't going to get that player that they think they're going to get. I'm not going to be what they want me to be. I'm going to be a disappointment. I'm going to disappoint them. And then while I was just starting to wrap my head around what they had just wrote about me, the WNBL reposted the article and put it up on their social media, and it destroyed me. I was oh my God. And now in this league that I love so much, all these people are reading all these awful things about me. And I actually ended up calling the head of the league, being you know what? I can't handle the things that have been written about me right now. And they, to their credit, they were great. They took it down. The original news outlet kept it, obviously, but I felt supported by my league in that moment, because they were look, we didn't realize that was going to hurt you. We'll take it down straight away, blah, blah, blah. And I was oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. But for the next 5 days, I was just starting my preseason with a new team, and all I could think about was oh my God, did they read it? Are they going to think that I'm a good stats, bad team player? Are they going to think that I'm this awful person to be around? And so I was so hyper, I wasn't shooting the ball as much. I was just passing it to everyone all the time. I wasn't being the way that I... You weren't being you. It wasn't being me. No. So the point of me saying that is, for one, I think that in previous versions of myself wouldn't have reached out to people.
No.
And so I made the first step. I reached out to my psych and was like, I need to talk about this. I also, reaching out to the league was a big step for me because I was like, I think previous versions of me would have been like,
that's scary to do.
Oh my God, so scary. Yeah. But previous versions of me would have been like, the league doesn't care, no one cares, blah, blah. But like, to feel supported by my league in that moment was huge, and they acted in a way that I felt super respected. But I think from that, my biggest takeaway was like, well, I need to mute media. And because I thrive in a lot of media spaces. I put a lot of my life out there, but I need to mute and not read things after games. I need to change my privacy settings so I can't get messages from randoms telling me how bad I played. Like, I need to mute that. And I think that, like, hearing you say that, I was like, yeah, that's just another confirmation that is absolutely something that I need to do, because it destroys me. Yeah. And it takes me like 2 weeks to start feeling normal again. And then someone else would write something and then it's like, duh.
Well, I think what's forgotten in that is that you show up for a game and, like, yes, you go out there and you're going to try your best. You're going to, like, no one is ever going out there to play poorly. Like, no one is ever going out there to let a team down or let their fans down or anything like that. But also you have no idea what you've been through during the week. Yeah. And so I'm showing up. I used to say this all the time. I'm like, I show up as like a video player, like a player in like a video game for like some people to get enjoyment out of. Yeah. I just always feel like if I go out there and I've prepared how I, want to prepare, and I'm really happy with the week that I've had, and I go out there and I get my ass handed to me. Yeah. Like, that's okay. I still showed up. I still put my hat in the ring. Like, I still showed up, put my shoes on, like, gave it a crack. Yeah. And it's not always going to go well. Like, you're going to have bad games. Yeah. And I feel like the whole social media thing really turned down my ego. Yeah. So I couldn't read the good stuff where people was like, she's amazing. And like feed my ego and be like, I am so good. I also couldn't get an ego hit when people were like, she sucks. Uh-huh. And I feel like it allowed me to have a lot more control of my ego in my sport. And I feel like if you can harness your ego and how you sort of feel within it, because I think ego is an important thing. It makes us who we are. It makes us strive and to be better and to like it's really big in competitive stuff. Yeah. Like I think ego is important, but I think harnessing your ego is a really important skill to have. And I feel like turning off my social media and not buying into any of that really adjusted my ego for me.
Yeah, no, I really love that, because like it's interesting, because I'm really working on my brand, like my me, and I think that I'm trying to get to this place, and I am encouraging other people to get this place. Building your brand doesn't mean you have to read everything that's said on social media. Like, you can put stuff out there without sacrificing the parts of yourself that giving too much of yourself to the people that can write things about you, I guess, like not giving people the power over you in that way. And I think that it can sometimes be confused when like, I'm like, say I put a lot of myself out there on social media, and then if I'm going through something, that a lot of comments are like, oh, maybe you're putting too much of yourself out there. I was like, just because I'm being honest and open doesn't give people the right to like write awful crap. It just doesn't. No. I also don't understand, like, I would never write.
No. And that's the other thing that I always try and like, it's really not a reflection on me. Yeah. Because at the end, there's like 5 people in my life that I like care about their opinion. Like my mom, my dad, my sister, and seven, my dog. 3 best friends.
Oh, yeah. No, like number one.
Yeah. My dog. Yeah. My parents and my 3 best friends. And if they're proud of me and if they're happy with how I'm walking through life, then like, the rest, I really don't give a fuck. Yeah. So, I think, I just think social media it's such a positive thing at times. And like, I've learned so much about things on social media. Like TikTok is the best place for me. I'm like honest every day. I'm like, wow, I've learned new stuff. Yeah. And so I think social media can be really powerful. Yeah. And I put a video out a few weeks ago, and the response we got from that just people messaging being like, thank you so much for talking about this because it's helped me do X, Y, Z. So I think social media is such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
But I also think you really need to be aware of, how much you take on board from what is being said. And if they don't know you and if they don't know your phone number or if they don't have access to be able to say, let's go and grab a coffee, then like.
What was it that Tom Holland said? Do you remember that quote? No. He said, he was like, for those who don't know who Tom Holland is, he's Zendaya's boyfriend, obviously.
Okay,
Spider-Man,
I was
but
like,
Zendaya's
boyfriend.
He said, if you have a problem with me, text me. And if you don't have my number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. I'm just looking around the room. That's awesome. I love that. Like,
I agree.
That is like, it's also like so true. If you don't know me well enough to have my phone number, then
And don't get me wrong, like also like cultivating that group around you that I know those 7 people, obviously my dog can't talk, but the 6 people will also tell me if I'm off track and if they think I'm being a little bit rogue and if they think they're like, that's not kosher, we don't, don't do that.
Yeah.
So I also do have, it's not like I just have people in my life who are like, oh, you're doing great all the time and I'm really proud of you. They're also like, I didn't like how you did that. And so be like, don't do that again.
Yeah.
So it's not always just like people telling me I'm great all the time.
Yeah.
It's just the right people who I respect, who know me, who know when I'm going through things and will also give me a little bit of grace if, say, I rock up and I don't touch the ball in a netball game. They're like, oh, well, she had a massive week. And like, I know what she's gone through.
Yeah. No, I love that. I really do. I think that one of the last questions I'm going to ask you before we go into the rapid fire by Reebok, I think if you had the chance to sit down with like baby Kels, like what would you say to her? What do you think she would say to you?
I think she would be like, wow, doll, we finally figured it out.
Yeah.
Because I think it had, like, I'm 31 and I'm still learning. I still feel like every single day I'm like, oh, I would do that differently, or I've learnt that today, or okay, let's recalibrate. And so I think she would be like, it took a bit. It took my whole 20s for me to understand myself at all. And I'm still just scratching the surface. And there's probably been, I would say there's been like 2 turning points in my life. One, the most recent with the, Collingwood folding. It kind of was like a rock bottom of, oh my gosh, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
But it's been the catalyst that has sprung me into like some of the most amazing couple of weeks that I've just had.
Yeah.
And my other one was my ACL, when I did my ACL, because my identity was so tied up in netball and being a netballer that when you can't do it, and my way of like expressing myself or showing up in the world was hopping on court and playing well. So that was there's been 2 really big moments for me, but they're the things that I'm the most grateful for in my life. They're hitting rock bottom for me is almost exciting because I'm like, whoa, where are we going to go from here?
Next? Yeah,
what happens now?
You don't hit rock bottom, you bounce off it.
Yeah, you literally it's just like springboard.
Yeah.
So that's how I view things in my life, and that's what I would say to baby Kels is like, when you think it's all dead and gone and all hope is lost, the coolest things often come from those moments, and it's just got to be how you look at it. And like, I think your outlook on life is massive. I just got new tattoos actually on the front of my ankles, and the saying is as within, so without. And for me, that means like, if I'm negative on the inside, if I'm looking at a situation negatively, it's going to turn out negatively.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to get more of what you're looking for. And so I just always try and flip situations. Like, it's terrible, but I'm still going to look at this like in a really positive
Well, your perception
manner.
Is your reality at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not like toxic positivity. That's not like not thinking that some things are really difficult and really hard.
Yeah.
I just think if I can go into it being like, okay, what's a lesson I can learn from this, or what's a way that I can catapult out of this, or this might be a pivot shift that I really need, great.
I love that. I actually love that. I like that saying. Say it again.
As within, so without.
As within, so without.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I saw this really cool piece of art the other day that had like I'm really into art. That's like kind of my thing. But like it was like you could see the side of the face and like the eyes and then what it was looking at. And on one side of the brain, it had like all these like positive words and colors and things swirling. And that outlook through that eye was just like this colorful, bright world. Blah, blah, blah. And on the other side, it was like or a loop of negative thoughts kind of, and then the outlook through that eye was just like so bleak, but it was the same image through different perceptions, and that's exactly what those words mean.
100%. I live my life by that saying. That's why I got it tattooed on me, because I just always think there's different ways you can look at things, and I've been caught in the cycle so many times of getting to a point where I've something hasn't gone my way and I've been like, oh, of course this would happen to me, like victim mentality and like, oh, yeah, like nothing ever works out. I've been there. Yeah. And so I've seen how that can pan out. Yeah. Whereas now I'm like, hang on, I don't want to go there. I want to be like, well, nothing's working. Like at a point in time, I was unemployed. Like my club folded. And one of the people I loved the most in my life was going through a really difficult time. And I still was like, all right, what does this mean? Like, where are we going for? Like, how can I show up for them? And what does this mean for my life? Yeah. So it was cool. It's been the best moment, to be honest.
And it has catapulted you into a different space. I hope for the people listening, like if you are experiencing something and you are going through a particularly tough time, you realize that you do sometimes when you hit rock bottom, it is the platform to springboard you up into new, better and amazing things. Like rock bottom is hard and it is awful and it is dark and it is lonely, but you don't stay there.
And sometimes I think rock bottom, like what is rock bottom?
Exactly.
That could just be a new beginning.
Exactly.
What is rock bottom?
Exactly.
Let's not call it that.
I think that I can't relate to you any more intensely than what you just spoke about. Like I was experiencing like a massive change in my basketball career, and while I was going through that in a different country, I was about to get on a plane to go back to the WNBA. I found out that my dad had cancer. So and from there, like I was like, you know, I came home for a multitude of reasons, and I was feeling like my world was about ready to collapse. And then all these amazing opportunities arose that I wouldn't have gotten to do if I didn't end up leaving the WNBA.
100%.
Which is incredibly crazy. And like, look, my dad is still going through it, and there's other people in my life that are still, you know, going through some personal things. And, but it's so, I cannot stress it enough to the people listening. Like there is always light. There is always light coming. It doesn't stay like that. Even though when you're in it, it's like sometimes it feels like everything sucks and it's not going to get better. That's not, it won't stay like that. No. It just won't. Like listen to KV and listen to Anneli. We're telling you it's going to get better. It is.
And it doesn't mean like it's not going to be hard work. Like I look at this new chapter of my life and like with the commentary stuff, I feel like I'm putting in hours and like sometimes it's feeling really good and like I'm diving headfirst into all of these new things, and it's been the hardest I've worked for ages. And like I worked really hard at netball. That was like the one thing I was good at, was like my work ethic. Wasn't the most talented at everything else, but my work ethic was high. And I feel like I've worked so hard, and like I'm not saying that the last few weeks haven't been so much hard work. But I am starting to see some sort of rewards. I'm even just like meeting new people, like being around new people and seeing different perspectives. And I just feel like I've been a sponge. So, but without entering into new spaces, you don't get to be a sponge. You just get to stand still sometimes.
Yeah, I like that. That was a very wholesome bit right there. I really like that bit of woosah. Okay, so we're gonna head into the rapid fire by Reebok. I wish I could actually you could sing. You could probably sing like that. Also, when this episode goes live, we need to surely overlay some sort of footage of you singing the national anthem somewhere. Like, talk about multi-talented. Anyway. What these questions kind of range from a lot, but What strategies do you use mentally when you receive negative feedback from a coach?
Strategies do I use? Wait, sorry, can you ask me that again?
What strategies do you use when, it says mentally, but what strategies do you use when you receive negative feedback from a coach?
I think understanding that it's really hard for someone to deliver negative feedback. So I think I always put myself in their shoes and say that's going to be a hard thing for them to tell me anyway. And if they didn't really mean it and they didn't really want to get that across to me, then they wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
So I always try and flip it. Again, my thought processes are always flipping it into like they're trying to make me better.
Yep.
And they wouldn't invest that time into me if they didn't care. So that's what I try and do.
What's your favorite post-netball meal?
Or like a burger. I'm like a dirty, cheesy burger.
Yes.
I love that.
And then what's your favorite coffee shop at the moment?
So in Richmond, it's Heart Coffee on Burnley Street.
Shout out.
But I've also been going to Sonali a little bit in South Melbourne.
Oh, I love that place.
It's great.
How excited were you when the Pies won the flag?
Oh, to be fair, I had like bittersweet feelings around the club, but I straight up have loved that club for 5 years and you get to know the players. And so I am really happy for them. It's big.
In a few words,
this is going to be hard for me.
This might actually, I'm going to take out the few words part. This girl is falling out of love with netball after a major injury. How did you get back up after yours? Best feedback, advice, etc.
Yeah, so my best feedback after I hurt myself was how many games have you, and this is my psych, I love her. She goes, how many games have you played where you haven't hurt yourself? And I was like, thousands. And she's like, and you've played one game where you've majorly hurt yourself? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, so look at those odds. Mm-hmm. And how much have you like grown and learned? Like, I just think looking at a rehab situation as like, how can I make myself 1,000 times better? Doing my knee made my body so much better because it made me address things in my body that I wouldn't have addressed if everything was just going to plan.
Yeah.
So I just always think like getting back into like feeling good in your body, like actually not even looking at your rehab as like, oh, I want to get back to playing netball. Yes, that can be an end goal. But like I was like, I just want to run again because running makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And I think breaking your rehab down into like, I want to get back to running because running makes me feel good.
Yeah.
That's that goal. Then once you do that, okay, I want to now change direction because maybe one day I want to come back and play netball.
Yeah.
Great. And like really breaking it down and ticking off goals.
Yeah.
Helped me. It almost like flew by because then when I started playing netball again, I was like, oh, I'm back here.
Yeah.
But I just ticked off so many little things.
Yeah.
And I don't think like looking at it as this whole chunk of like, I need to get back to play. Also, when I got back from my knee, I was terrible.
Yeah.
Like I could not play netball anymore.
Yeah.
And so just really breaking down the standards you have for yourself, like it's not going to feel amazing the first time you come back, but that's okay.
Yeah, I like that. What's your pump up song? Do you have one at the moment?
I don't have. Oh, yeah. Actually, at the moment, it's that. On Friday. You know that
No. Keep going more.
You know that song? It's like,
give me more. Come on, you got the mic in front of you and everything.
I'm going to play it for you.
Yeah, play it for me because I all I heard was
I've got it on right now.
Do you actually? Okay.
Hang on.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is a bop.
It is a bop.
Do you guys know this song?
It's on repeat. Oh, is this a bop? Ready? Belly on Christian on me.
This is a great song. That's absolutely, yeah, that's great. You know what? That song, like driving on any sort of freeway with your windows down.
That was me to carry him down today.
Like, and your hair's just, whooshing and you're just like, like, I don't even know what the words are saying. I'm probably just like, like.
Yeah, that's why you didn't understand it when I sang it the first time.
100%. And then the last one of these rapid fire by Reebok questions, who is your biggest inspiration?
Never been very rapid, sorry.
Yeah, I know, that's okay. They never are.
My biggest inspiration, I think would be my family. Like, it can't be one person, but I think would be my family. Like, my sister, for the inspiration that she gave me early days of netball. My mum is the strongest person I know. And my dad has ruined every standard for, you know, a partner that I will have. Yeah. Because he is just the most thoughtful, caring person. Like, I honestly say to my sister, like, we're screwed. Yeah. Because my dad just sets the standards. He's the kind of person that, like, will fill up my car with petrol because, like, I need to go down the highway. Like, he's just the best. So my family, biggest inspiration.
I love that. Okay, last question. How do you think people see you versus who you actually are?
Yeah, I think there's a big contrast. I think people have a perception of me, and whether, you know, it was my own doing early on when I was still trying to figure out who I was. I think people sort of saw me as this really, like, confident vibe, and, like, I am now. But I think they think I don't have sort of, like, emotions or that I can get hurt. Yeah. And I think if you do know me really well, that I'm, like, a very sensitive person.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I probably have a lot of, like, I have a lot of walls up, I think. Yeah, I'm still figuring a lot of things out, and that's okay. Yeah. But I do think the contrast would be high.
I'm exactly the same. Okay. So I think for the most part, the people that are sometimes the loudest and the most bubbly in the room are the ones that are dealing with the most amount of stuff, because we don't want anybody else to feel what we're feeling. So we, like, project all this positive energy so people can't see the stuff that we're hiding.
I also just am like, I think my biggest downfall is, like, I don't want to be a burden to anyone at any time. So I'm genuinely like, how can I will come home from, like, social events sometimes and be like, why am I so tired? Yeah. Oh, that's because, like, you didn't want to be, like, a burden. Like, you didn't want to, I don't know. I just, like, my biggest fear in life is being a burden to people, but it's also, like, my worst trait.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. Because, like, you do come home from social events and you're like, whoa, I am exhausted.
And it's not that you're not who you are.
No.
It's just, I'm like,
it just takes a lot.
Yeah, it just takes a lot out of you. But I also think what makes that contrast really special is that, like, the people who do know me to the nth degree. Like, those 6 people in my life know I will call and be like, this is bleh. This is how I'm feeling. Yeah. And it's really special that they understand Kelsey to a T. They know what makes me tick. They know what makes me upset. It's I feel like it's a really special thing to have that bond with people, and I'm lucky I've got a few.
Yeah, that is awesome. I like the difference to where the way people answer that last question, it always varies. It's like there seems to be this film between, you know, how we experience the world and how we see ourselves to how the masses see us and stuff like that. But I'm hoping that kind of the gap closes. The more we put ourselves out there, the gap closes and it closes and it closes, and we become more human, I guess.
I also just feel like that is, you know how there's that thing on TikTok at the moment that's like your Roman Empire?
Yes.
That's my Roman Empire.
That's your Roman Empire.
My Roman Empire is honestly, like, how do people view things? Yeah. Because, like, I know how I see things, but, like, it's mind-blowing to me that, like, you and I are looking at the same thing, but you can see something completely different to me. Exactly. That's my Roman Empire. I think about it all the time.
I love that.
And I'm honestly like, and so that question is hard because I'm like, well, how I view myself and how I see myself, I will never have any idea what people think of me. So maybe the contrast is big. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Okay. So we could honestly sit here and talk for the next, like, 5 hours. But, like, that was really special to me, not only to talk to, like, you as an athlete, but as a human. I loved your outlook on, like, your career, your person, the things that you've been through, but also, like, all the stuff you continue to do. And I said it before, I think you're starting to pave a way for a new type of, like, quote unquote career transition. The whole, like, traditional forms of roots of, like, how you have to do things in a certain line. Like, I love the way that you kind of spoke about all of that. And I'm really excited for not just, like, aspiring athletes and women to listen to this, but current you don't have to do anything a certain type of way. And I'm like also kind of excited to see where you go next. Like you're leaning into whatever. And I think that's so cool. And I think that like, I hope that people can listen to this and not just take out of, all of the things that you've experienced, but also listen to the way that you're approaching stuff and maybe apply that to their everyday life. Because there's so much for me, I listened to so much of that and I was like, I'm going to need to re-listen and write some of this down, because like when you talked about the 2 different parts of your career, I was like, I didn't even have that question written down. I was like, I need to know how you did this.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. This is my why. I say this all the time. Like this is my why. This is what gives me the drive to do stuff. And I'm super appreciative, and I'm sure everyone at the Under the Surface kind of fam is too. And as we continue to grow this space, like I want to continue to make this space like super comfortable for not just people to ask questions, but to interact with us and all that stuff. And we're super grateful.
No, I feel like you're doing I think coming in here today, I met you for the first time today. I feel like I've sat here with a friend and had and we didn't get to have a coffee, but I've sat here and
that.
I think the biggest thing is like just never. Like my biggest thing out of this would be just never let anyone put you in a box, because I don't even know what box I fit in. So how can I let other people put me in one?
Exactly. Slay to that. Okay. So, that was awesome. I really appreciate it. This was Under the Surface Pumped by Reebok. And I'm your host, Anneli Maley. And that was Kelsey Browne. There we go.
Good job.